Hello and welcome for a new episode of Struck, where we talk about technology in general, blockchains, and in specific, ZK rollups. Today I have Motty with me. Hey Motty, nice to have you.
Hey Henri, pleasure to be here.
Motty is working on Braavos, which is, how would you define Braavos?
Well, Braavos is a smart contract-based wallet taking full advantage of account abstraction on top of Starknet.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And right now you're mostly on Starknet, or do you plan to expand to other chains, or are you already on other chains?
Currently, we are fully focused on Starknet.
Really nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll explore this. We'll talk about your plans for the future and how you approach the Braavos development. Before we start, I'm curious to hear a bit about you, Motty. So can you tell me a bit what's your background?
Yeah, sure. I'm a computer science engineer. Actually, when I had to decide what to learn, I thought that I would go and learn mathematics because I thought this is like the base of everything. I was young and a bit naive, but since it was very easy to get accepted to mathematics, and for computer science it was much harder, so I say, okay, we'll put like the first priority computer science and second mathematics, and I will do like a combination, like a joint degree. And eventually, although I still very much like math, I fell in love with computer science, and eventually spend most of my time in the first degree doing computer science courses, and then jumping right into the industry.
Cool. What kind of computer science was it like? Because there's a lot of things you can do with computers, right?
Yeah, so I think that I studied at the Technion, which is like the Israeli technology university, and I think that the cool thing about the Technion, that it really taught us the basics of the fundamentals of computers. And looking back, it was over 20 years ago, so it's like learning how to learn. Yeah. Which was, at least in Israel, not sure how is it in French, but at least in Israel, it's a big gap from like high school.
Yeah, it's not so much about the content of the classes themselves, but it's about being able in short amount of time of diving into a topic and understanding it, right?
Yeah, and understanding that like in depth. I think that I didn't really know what to understand the topic is before I got into the Technion.
Interesting.
So that was really cool. And then I like back then in Israel, it was a tradition that you start working while you're a student to get some industry experience and also some pocket money. So I got into the industry relatively quickly. I started in back in the days in like real physical hardware, like silicon. So my first job as a student, and then later as an engineer, was actually to write embedded software on silicon. We did, it's kind of funny every time that I tell the story. It makes me feel old, because we did what used to be back then state-of-the-art technology, which was DVD playback, DVD recorder, and digital TV. So
but you had the opportunity to write software for such chips in Israel. I didn't know like these things were produced locally. I would imagine that most of it would be done like either in Asia or in the US.
Yeah, so it's developed, like the R&D is in Israel, but the manufacturing is like I think most of the world is in TSMC in Taiwan. So that's what you actually produce the silicon. But it was like a great engineering school. So if the Technion, the university, was a great school for learning how to learn and how to think. So being an engineer like that, my first job was really a great school of what it means to be an engineer. Um, and when I'm jumping like a bit ahead, when I got familiar with Cairo, it brought me back to like my first one of my first jobs as a young engineer, in which I wrote the code for the video codec H.264 in assembly, like in machine language.
I was gonna
And
say you probably did a bunch of assembly, and probably Cairo gave you some PTSD about that, right?
yeah, so when I first encountered Cairo, which was much more rudimentary than it is today, and still today, to be honest, right? It's still rudimentary if you compare it to other more mature languages. It was like a real flashback to writing in assembly. So I started my career there. Then I joined a company that in Israel that tried to do the first Israeli modular phone.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
What
it was.
modular phone in which sense? Like you can assemble pieces of hardware into an actual phone?
Yeah, exactly. So it was pre-iPhone, pre-smartphones, or actually the smartphone revolution started approximately when the company was 1 years old, and the idea was to indeed to have like a core of a phone that can get into many different shapes. So you can have a phone for running, and you can put something on it for something which is more business-like, with an actual keyboard. It was the days of Blackberries, etc. And then you can put it in something which is much more cool to take out when you go to the pub at night, etc. So that was
That's
another
quite fun.
great.
I'm not aware of any project that actually managed to that. I read some things about something that is called a fair phone, where the idea is like the goal is not necessarily for it to be adaptable to where you're going, but for you to be able to repair it and remove one piece that doesn't work, put it into place. That's the only instance of a modular phone that I've heard of. I didn't know this was an active field of research or of business development.
Yes, well, it was 2007
Wow.
to 2010. Yes, and it was a very nice endeavor, although it wasn't a commercial success. Eventually, the company got closed and sold its patent to Google, which then became Motorola, and Motorola had their chance to build on top of that and produce somewhat of a modular phones. But as we know, currently we have iPhones and Android phones which are not that modular, but still
Yeah.
provide all of our needs.
Well,
Yeah,
they're
so
modular at the application level, not at the hardware level for sure.
yes. They are modular in the application level, and I think I think the trade-off, the industry reached a point in which it's a good trade-off between the fact that you have one form factor with all the functionality in it, and the cloud to back it, and without the need to change form factor as you go. And you do have things like smartwatch and stuff like that if you need something which is a bit lighter.
Yeah, it's true. You can customize it a bit, like the form of it, but having the single form factor makes it much easier. Like for example, when you need to smooth phone or whatever, like it has less maintenance, I guess.
Yeah. Um, and after the modular phone company, I started my own company, Comigo, together with a partner, which is one of the prominent, I would say, high-tech figures in Israel. And in Comigo, we had around. This is where I spent most of my last decade, and
Mm-hmm.
we had a chance to do, I think, everything from like physical hardware to embedded software, cloud software, and in recent years, a lot of AI. So physical hardware, I had manufacturing lines in China and in Taiwan, shipping units to all over the
Wow.
world. And what we did is actually we did products for the pay TV industry, which, if you will forgive my French, it's a shitty industry. It's an industry that that used to be very big, in the early 2000s, and then it shrank and shrank and shrank, but still in their mindset they are still very big.
It's
So
quite impressive. I don't know if it's been like this for a long time or if it's an artifact of recent years and things moving forward, like moving fast, quite fast. But it feels like there's a lot of industries like this who rose extremely fast for a short period of time and then in another short period of time just kind of crumble and disappear. You mentioned BlackBerry earlier. Pay TV is to me one other one. The other one is like set-top box, the set-top box industry, having your box from your internet in your living room. It's obviously still a big thing, but for a short while it was like everything was about these boxes. And now, new thing came up, Netflix or Amazon TV or whatever. And, these boxes are not so important as they used to be just like 5 or 10 years ago. It's
yeah,
really impressive.
yeah, I think I think about it all the time, because eventually every industry, and more precisely every company, come into what, if you're familiar with the term, the innovator's dilemma. Like there
Hmm.
was a Harvard professor, Clayton Christensen, who said that each big company comes into a point in which it needs to decide if they want to innovate. And by innovate, they are killing their existing very profitable business, or they want to try to keep their existing very profitable business and risk with a competitor that will innovate and will compete them out of existence. And that's like, history repeats itself here, times and time again. And you mentioned Netflix. Netflix had this exact dilemma, and when they were in the business of like shipping DVDs to people's
Yeah.
houses. Netflix CEO, when he understood that streaming is the future of the company, then he simply shifted his entire focus, including creating a whole new management and to deal with the streaming business. And this is something that is extremely hard to do, to get to come to all your executive and say to them, listen, you are not part of this new thing. You take care of the old thing. We have a new team that take care of the new thing, and this is where all my focus is. And we see that all the time, and we see that now with Google and ChatGPT. They also have their own innovator's dilemma. And I look at it also on our little kind of ecosystem of when it's time to innovate and when it's time to hold your own. So maybe just to quickly, Henry, complete the story. So in Comigo, we had a tremendously good and interesting run. And eventually we sold the activity and move on. And then it's basically, when I started to really get into crypto. Before that, I saw mainly the FUD. I didn't have time to like dive in, etc. So
So
I mainly saw,
mostly newspaper headlines.
yeah, mostly newspaper headlines, and number grew up, and really didn't understand or had the time to dive in and understand the beauty of this industry.
So what made
Uh,
you change your mind? What made you think like, oh, let's take a look. Let's take a closer look.
I think it's two things. One, I had a bit of time,
Yep.
and the second thing, I saw many people who I didn't consider like people who are
Fools.
interesting in numbers going up, that are taking very close very close attention to the space. And I say, listen, maybe there is something there, maybe there is something beyond the headlines. And that's when I, as the cliche said, that's when I fell down the rabbit hole.
So where did you start your journey? Like, how did you go about discovering what was crypto about? Did you start from articles? Did you start with, I don't know, the Bitcoin white paper? Did you start with writing smart contract?
So I started first theoretically. So I started with the Bitcoin white paper, and then I said, okay, let's try to implement that to see, that I really understand that. So that was very nice, and the Bitcoin white paper itself was like extremely eye-opening. But I think that back then, not that it was a very long time ago. I think it was early 2020. There was, for me at least, it was very hard to get knowledge in a systemic way. So I think that there was an excellent book that I read from four guys at Princeton that wrote it around Bitcoin and blockchain, which was fantastic, but it was out, I think, in 2016 or 2017, and by 2020, half of the book was no longer relevant.
Yeah.
But it was still a great book. So I had to pick, all sorts of pieces of information, and to my great surprise, the level of academic interest in the space was huge, certainly compared to what I expected when looking.
You mean that you mean that there are a lot of researchers taking a look at what crypto is and how people use it, and there are a lot of academic papers around them, right?
Exactly. So there are a lot of academic papers, from leading researchers in leading institutions, whether it's around cryptographers and around economics, and that was, that was extremely interesting. That was very hard to collect, like to know what is good, what is less good, what is noise, what is like real material that is worth digging into. I think that now the state of the industry is much better in terms of what you can call systemization of knowledge. But back then, at least for me, there was it was hard to get a hold on good material.
Do you think the industry has gotten better at it, or do you think you got better at it? Because I feel like for a lot of people, it's really hard. Like you mentioned, like where do you go? Where do you start? There are a few obvious points. One being the Bitcoin white paper, the other one being the Ethereum white paper. But aside from that, like there are a few shelling points. But then it's a bit like it's hard to point one place where people go. The one place where people agree the news is Twitter, but it's also very noisy. So once you've established your good lists and you know where to look for, you have your routine, you know how to filter. But I don't know that, like, I'm not sure as an industry as a whole, it's easier for newcomers to dive in.
So I have a very good recommendation for anyone who is listening and interesting to dive in. So besides the obvious of the Bitcoin white paper and the Ethereum white paper and yellow paper, there is a fantastic course that was done by Berkeley, Stanford, and London School of Economics, if I'm not mistaken. I can send you a link and maybe we can put it in the show notes.
Absolutely.
That's a great course with great lectures from these institutions, and some crypto OGs like Sam Sizisan, and I think Hasu was also there, and covering everything from the basic of blockchain to DeFi, stablecoin, writing smart contracts, attacking smart contracts, like a great source for people who really want to dive in from and learn from the basics.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
And so you got into it and you figured, okay, this is interesting. I want to know more. when did you decide? Oh, this is where my next company is going to be. This is where I'm gonna spend my time.
I think that somewhere around falling in this rabbit hole, I came to realize, I told you a bit about my history. So I had a chance to do like silicon and embedded software, cloud software, a lot of AI and video understanding. And for me, crypto is like the most exciting of all because it has a very unique combination of like extremely cool technology, really cutting edge, and it has also an economic facet to that,
Yeah.
and a social facet to that. And it's very rare that all three are combined together. And take it with the fact that I really believe in crypto values of self-custodial and decentralization, and I think that at some point it was a no-brainer. So
nice. And and then you went on to start Braavos. I think, if I understand correctly, the current people you're working at Braavos with, you've known for a very long time. Is that correct?
yes, yeah. So the core team that we started Braavos, we know each other since I think 15 years makes us old.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
So did you
So
dive together in the rabbit hole, or did you go first and tell them, "Hey, there's something there. You should look at it"?
So I went first, and then shortly after I called the guys to join. I said, "Listen, this is amazing. This is not what seems from the outside. Yeah, and we have to do something in the space. And for us, from people who comes from like classic Web 2, and in Web 2 everything that you do is to reduce friction, make things as much easier as possible to the user. We came into crypto, and like the experience was horrific. Yeah. So and we are pretty technical people, but still installing a self-custodial wallet, starting handling the keys, worrying that every little mistake that you make, all your funds are gone. It's like the complete opposite for Rep2. And
I agree.
for us, it was like really fresh in the.
It's both sobering and exciting. It's sobering because you feel like, oh, we have so much to go before this thing is actually usable. But it's also really exciting because everything is to build. And if you're used to easing friction, now you're up to a point where there's so much friction that there's a lot of things to ease and remove, right? So
Yes, most definitely. That was one of the main drivers to actually start Braavos. So part of falling into the rabbit hole, I looked on all the different L1s and the pros and cons, and realized that at least for me, Ethereum should be the home base, both in terms of doing the right trade-offs of security, scalability, and decentralizations, and the community and the network effect that it already gained. But it was very clear that the Ethereum has a scalability problem. And then I started looking on the different L2 solutions. Started with sidechains, then understand that that's not a real solution, and then optimistic rollups and ZK rollups, or validity rollups, as I think Ellie likes to call them. And then quickly realized that ZK rollups are a superior technology. And in terms of what can be built on ZK rollups, Starknet was, and I believe still is, in the forefront in terms of bringing a solution to market. And that's when we decided to settle in terms of settlement, right, on Starknet and actually start building.
Nice. And so that's when you did your first lines of Cairo. When you started on Starknet, how were things? Like there's still a lot to be built, but even if you had spent just 2 months, which is not your case, you've been there for a while, like things always get better because we have still a long way to go, right? So how was it? Do you remember what was the experience like to write your first smart contract?
Yeah. So uh, you know. Technology-wise, it was clear that Starknet and Stark are the winning solution. The main concern that we had was indeed with the Cairo language, because first is it's a new language that at the beginning only work within Starkware, and it does not enjoy the ecosystem that Solidity has, and the many developers and tools, etc. So that was a concern for us, and we said, okay, let's start and do some. Let's kick the tires. Let's build something, and just to see if we can build it and it works. So like the first project we built, even before Braavos, is a classic AMM. It is called MySwap. MySwap is actually the first DeFi app to launch on Starknet testnet and then Starknet mainnet. And it was a school project for us. So when we launched that, we didn't really tell anyone because we thought that no one would be interested. It's another AMM on a Uniswap V2. Who cares? But somehow people find out about that, and we saw that in the first few days, dozens of people are coming, then hundreds, then thousands. Then at some point, it was over 10,000 people every day coming to exchange Monopoly money with
Wow.
other Monopoly money. Yeah, it was like, and that's for people who were coming from Web2, it was like amazing. It was, you couldn't grasp that. The element of community, and I understand airdrops, etc. I understand all that, but still, it was kind of amazing. So that was our first kind of attempt,
Trial.
trial. And in Cairo back then was extremely basic. Like I remember that I needed to write a square root function because there was no square root in Cairo. So, but I think that things now are much better, and even more encouraging. That the things that Cairo is now much better is the vector of improvement and the number of new developers that are entering the space every week, every month. So it's really cool. I remember that. I think that today you cannot go into Starknet Discord. It's very hard. When we started, it was like I call it. It was three teams and a cat, and so like really amazing to look at the ecosystem and how everything has grown so much.
Really nice. So after MySwap, what made you? Did you change directly to Bravos, or did you build something in between?
To tell you the truth, we saw the gap in experience, and we saw that things that can be done on Starknet, both with extremely low gas fees, things that are not economically viable on L1, and with account abstraction. And we kept waiting for the MetaMask of the world to come, and it was like it was kind of a conundrum for us why they aren't coming. And we said, okay, at some point we said, okay, the opportunity is so big, and the things that we can do here to bridge the gap for, I call it, for everyday users to be able to use crypto are so big that it's worth taking the chance that even if MetaMask comes tomorrow morning and we need to compete head to head, then it's worth doing that.
Nice. So how do you go about designing a wallet? Because you mentioned MetaMask. I think we're all familiar with the functionalities they propose. So how did you set up? Do you figure, okay, let's do what they do and then do something else? What's your vision for how people will interact with Starknet and blockchains in general, I guess, through their wallet in the short term and long term?
Yes, so I think, as I said, so for us it was always to reduce friction and have a much smoother experience into crypto. And here we had a lot of things to do. And before we started, we had a lot of ideas that, as I said, can be implemented thanks to the fact that on Starknet we have and should continue to have very low gas fees and have account abstraction like baked into the protocol. So before we started, we fought on some I think very cool ideas of what can be done, but in terms of the actual step by step, we understood that we have to provide, I call it the bread and butter, the basics of wallet functionality before we can get to the cream stuff. So and that's what we did. We did all the basic things of.
So what's the basic? Like browser extension? You have now a wallet signer on your phone. What
Yes.
would you do? What would you define as the baseline of what every wallet should have?
Yes, so we saw the basics as indeed having, you be able to see your tokens and of course sign transactions and support transfers and see your NFT collectibles in the wallet, whether it's JPEGs or 3D images, audio and video, which I think yet to come in the form of NFTs. Mobile apps, I see that also as the basic. I know that the industry as a whole is still not, is still much more extension focused, much more browser focused, but I think that mobile apps and be able to access your crypto on the go is also part of the basics. And what we call transaction explainer, so people will understand in plain English what they are signing on and not just see a bunch of random letters that don't really say anything. So these for us were the basics, and that was our focus in the first few months, releasing the extension, releasing the app for iPhone and Android with all this functionality baked in. And once we were done with that, then we started utilizing cool stuff of account abstraction. And besides the basic of, I think, multi-call that was there from the start, what we introduced last November was the hardware signer. The hardware signer actually utilized the security chips that we have in our phones in order to generate keys and securely sign transactions, meaning that even if your seed gets stolen and your device gets hacked, your crypto is still stays safe. And I think that this is like really cool because you get the experience that you're used to from Apple Pay, Google Pay, which is completely frictionless, completely use your biometric identification in order to authenticate you, but in crypto and keep you fully safe.
Yeah, and part of the reason why this wasn't possible before, and you mentioned it before, there's not a lot of mobile apps for crypto. Part of it is because it's hard to secure devices outside of these secure enclaves on your phone, right? I mean, your keys are always at risk if they're on your file system, and so, but you need to have them there if you want to be able to sign transactions for Ethereum, for example. So, being able to use this specific mobile specific hardware for account was a big breakthrough, I guess.
Yeah, so here we had two things that come to our advantage. One, we keep coming back to that, and we probably keep coming back to that towards the discussion, is the fact that on Starknet we have very low gas fees and we have account abstraction built in. The reason that both of these things are so important is because you cannot do hardware signer on any other blockchain, or at least not on any other popular blockchain like Ethereum or certainly Bitcoin, Solana, whatever,
Yeah.
because the built-in signature scheme that these blockchains support is not compatible with the signature scheme that is supported by the mobile devices. So even if you wanted to do that on, let's say, on base layer Ethereum, you couldn't do that because Ethereum signature doesn't support what the iPhone or the Android phone knows to produce. But luckily for us, we have a counter abstraction and we can have arbitrary verification logic. So we can implement the verification of what is called the SECP256R1 that is supported in the iPhone Secure Enclave. We can implement it in Cairo as the verification logic of the account smart contract. Now it's important twofold. So I said account abstraction and low gas fees for Starknet. And the low gas fees is important because, for example, we are now going to open source our fast SECP 256R1, so anyone can use that. So even our fast 256 R1 verification solution takes 250,000 Cairo steps in order to verify a signature. And that
what percentage of a block is it today? It's like a fourth or 2.5%. How big is a block? It's 1 million, 2, 10?
Well, it's I would say two things. So when we released the feature last November, then it was before optimization. So we had a more naive implementation that took approximately 400k steps, and the pricing model within Starknet block wasn't that I would say wasn't that tight or wasn't that favorable towards Cairo steps versus storage, and together with the Starknet team, there is now going to be introduced in version 11 a much more accurate pricing model for Cairo steps, which we should expect between 5x to 10x reduction of gas cost per step, which means in the layout of the block, the steps will get much more room and will get much less will endure much less cost. So take that and take the optimization that we did for the implementation, and you get over 90% kind of reduction in transaction. And I think my goal is it will be no brainer to enable hardware signer. So if you have a device that support that, it will be no brainer for you because it will be a few cents to enable it, and the experience that you get will be orders of magnitude better than using just a seed phrase.
Yeah, and I just looked it up. Currently, the block step limit for Girly is 2.5 million, and for mainnet it's 8 million. But like these are today. Within a month, it will be different. In 2 months, in 10 months, it will be much different. So, still, what you're saying is that you're pushing the limit with these things, and I think it's an interesting cycle here between people who build stuff and then they quote unquote break Starknet, and then it pushes us to innovate and do more stuff, and then they come up with more interesting use cases. I think that's great.
Yeah. So there are two things here, right? There is what you take from the block, and also how you price a block.
Yeah.
So what's the price for a step? What's the price for a built-in? What's the price for storage? Yep. And here, the Starknet team was very helpful in making a much more tight pricing, which benefits or which make Cairo steps a negligible cost.
Nice. So beyond hardware signing, where do you think user experience in wallet should go in the future? Like, do you have ideas? Like, is there a general direction you guys are really interested to go in?
Yeah, so I think that there is two parallel paths. Let's call them the security path or the account path, and the application path, and for now we can call it the DeFi path. And in terms of the account security path, we still have a way to go. I think the hardware signer is the first step, and it's really cool. And I think that everyone that has an iPhone can already use that. Everyone who has a Pixel Android phone can also use that. But we also see a big cohort of users that don't have these devices, don't have like the latest Android devices, and don't have an iPhone, and we are going to cater them as well. So the hardware signer is like the the highest form of security that you can get, because the signing is done in a dedicated, isolated module within the chipset. Sometimes it's in a totally different chip, so you can really compare it to a hardware wallet. But since many users do not have that, they do have something which is not as good, but still much better than having a seed phrase out of the open, and this is what is called a trusted execution environment.
Yep.
So without diving too much into the details, a trusted execution environment is when you put the application processor in a specific mode that create like two worlds: a world of where all the application running, and a secure world when only a predefined trusted applications, like application that can sign messages using keys, can run. It is not as secure as a totally separate model, but it is, as I said, much better than having your seed phrase in the open. So we want to cater that as well, and have people who still don't have like the latest mobile devices enjoy this level of security. The next thing that we are going to release, and maybe this will also already be released once this episode will be broadcast, is two-factor authentication. So
Nice.
so I think that in terms of trade-off, if you have an iPhone or if you have a Pixel Android phone, hardware signer can give you like an answer to, or can give 99.9% of the people an answer to their account and security needs. But still, I can see people who are holding a significant amount of funds in the wallet, and they want to be extra secure, and can go into the the type of security or the type of authentication if you want, but basically having another signer to sign transaction, whether it's on a separate account or on the same account, but above a certain amount, can reassure people. In TradFi they call them high net worth individuals. In crypto we call them whales. So can reassure people to hold a significant amount of money in the wallet. And when we think about that, we think always about ourselves. What will make us feel comfortable to hold a significant amount of money in the wallet and sleep well? So it's two ways. It's one, it's our money, and the other way it's our users' money. So that's really up and coming, and I think that there are a lot of more things that we want to do in terms of account abstraction. And at the end of the road, that hopefully won't be that far, is to completely get rid of the seed phrase, which is also we consider a very bad user experience. If you look at it today on Web2, people are trying very hard to move away from text passwords. There is the FIDO2 initiative that it's a consortium of Apple, Google, Microsoft, and others, and they really try to push organizations and individuals to walk away from text password, because it's the least secure form of authentication. And if you think about it in crypto, it's the only mode of authentication. Even in hardware wallets, you still have a seed phrase. So
Yep.
theoretically, you can still get phished for that seed phrase. So I think that the goal is to move away also in crypto from text passwords, aka seed phrases, and to really introduce something which is much more smooth to everyday users without them needing to worry, oh, what happens if I lose that? What happens if I mistype it, etc., etc.
I see what you mean. Nice. So easing the user experience, making it more safe. And what about you mentioned the application front, right? Like for people interacting with, I don't know, with applications. Is it something you plan to innovate on?
Yes. So I think that there are a couple of aspects here. Maybe I will address only the DeFi aspects, and we can leave the gaming and other stuff for another time. But in the DeFi aspect, that's also a recollection. Since, as we established, I'm kind of new to crypto, so I still have the memory of how was it to encounter things for the first time. And so in DeFi, I think that people have one of three choices. One is to really understand what each and every protocol means, understand the risks and the rewards, which is not easy and quite time consuming. And not everyone has the time or the capability to dive in there. The other option is to simply ape in, and we know that happens a lot in the industry. And the third, which I think many people default to, is that they don't really want to ape in, and they don't have the time to invest and really understand the risks and the rewards and time frame, etc. So they stay out. And I think part of our mission is to try to bridge also this gap and to allow users to easily invest and earn yields on their assets with one click from within the wallet. When we explain to them in plain English what it is they are getting into, and doing all the hard work of vetting behind the scene. Of course, there will always be those who will want to interact directly with the new protocols that come along. But I think for the vast majority of users, or at least for making users start using crypto and using DeFi, this bridging of the gap can be really helpful.
Yep, having a little bit of hand holding and having somebody look over your shoulder to make sure you're not doing anything stupid or telling you this is safe, this is probably not as safe, but would be very interesting. Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
This is all very exciting. All right, I think I've asked most of the questions I wanted to ask. So maybe to wrap it up, where should people go if they want to learn more about Braavos?
So people can come to our website, braavos.app, can follow us on Twitter, my Braavos, can follow me, Motty Lavie. We try to be active in all these fronts. Also, we have a very vibrant and active Discord community.
Nice.
You can find us there. The link is in the Twitter bio. So, and also in the website. So feel free to join.
Fantastic. Motty, is there anything else you want to mention?
No, it was a pleasure, Henry. Thank you very much for the time and for the questions. And
No, please. Thank you for being here. And until next time.
Thank you.
Bye.